Welcome to the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. Real inspiration for real innovators. If you're looking for innovation and leadership transformation, your journey starts now.
Welcome to the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Bourne. Hey, did you know my new book is out, Set It On Fire, The Art of Innovation? Head over to setitonfire.co to learn more. Well, my guest today is Shannon Roddy. He's not only my guest, but he's a friend, and he is an Amazon expert. So I'm excited to have him on. He's a speaker and also head of business development at Avenue 7 Media. And previously, he actually created a market seller course around Amazon brand success. This online course helped entrepreneurs not only launch, grow, but also protect their brands on Amazon. And he is a passionate innovator, which is why we've asked him to join us today. He and his family are in Atlanta, and we're excited to have you on the podcast, Shannon.
Thanks so much, Natalie, for having me. And we've been talking about it for a long time. I'm really excited we were able to make the scheduling happen and get to be here.
Well, I want to go back a little bit before we talk about what you're doing today. I would love for you to give us a little bit of your backstory. How did you get into creating an online course? I know a lot of people probably their ears perked up when you mentioned online course for one of two reasons. Either they want to do an online course or they probably want to go learn more about the online course you did. So talk about how you got into even launching that in the first place.
Yeah. So, I mean, it really goes back about 15 years now. My wife and I had actually returned from Africa. The picture behind me is Oldonyo Longai near Kenya, near where we lived. And I didn't have a job. It was right after the economic crash. And so a good friend of mine, Eric Koymans, took me under his wing and taught me web design and helped me launch my own web design company. So I started contracting from him and then also getting some of my own clients. And as part of that, we would build out e-commerce sites for brands. And inevitably, an extension of that would be, can you also help out on Amazon? And so I remember Eric assigned me a task to help clean up a major e-commerce brand that he was working on. And he said, okay, here's your task. You got to upload these 2,500 products and you've got to clean up all this mess that's already on Amazon. I just said, Eric, I don't know how to do this, And he said, you'll figure it out. And after 2.5 weeks of banging my head against the wall on hold with seller support, endless frustration, I called him back and I said, Eric, I literally can't do this. I said, you need to go hire an expert. And he said, Shannon, we can't. They're too expensive. Go figure it out. So I pushed through and eventually things started clicking. I started learning things that nobody else was talking about. And I thought this was so valuable. I wish I had this information when I started. And I just started writing a blog about it. And so I would blog about this just on my website, business website. And so as that evolved, every time I learned something, I would turn around and teach it to others. I'm an educator at heart. It's just who I am. I can't stop it. If I have a principle that I feel will help you, I'm going to share with you, And so that developed over the course of the next 2 or 3 years. And I realized more and more that Amazon was this existential opportunity, and WordPress wasn't going anywhere. E-commerce, was fine, but there was something about Amazon that I understood, that I got, even though it was difficult and challenging, it made sense to me. And I discovered that I could explain it to other people in a way that made sense to them. I could take really, really complicated principles and make them simple and easy to understand. And so I started doing coaching, and eventually I pivoted. We moved from LA to Atlanta. I shut down the website company and founded Marketplace Seller Courses, under which I launched the Amazon Brand Success Academy, which it is actually no longer online. I'll get to that in a second, unfortunately, for those eager listeners who would be excited to go through it. But I ran that business for about 7 years. And at that point, Amazon was still getting so complicated and moving so fast with so many verticals, even I couldn't keep up.
Yeah.
And so I met Jason Boyce and Angela Murphy and Dale Dabbs, who were the executive team at Avenue 7 Media. And I loved the passion that they had. I loved the company that they had built and were planning to build. And I said, I want to join you. I want to be acquired. Will you guys acquire and hire me? And after a handful of conversations, they said yes. I joined them in February of 2022 as a head of business development. And it was the best business decision I've made as an adult, past the age of 22. Just the leadership opportunities I've had, the ability to help and impact so many brands. And so at that point, we took those courses, we turned them internal to train our team. But I used that learning experience to help me. And over the course of that, 7, 8 year period, I coached probably 200 to 250 brands. And as you coach brands over and over again, you begin to see repetitive behavior. You discover what works and what doesn't work. And you learn from every single one of them. Even if they're there to get coaching from you, you still learn from them. And that makes you more prepared for the next one. So it's just been a wealth of knowledge. I think I remember a therapist once said, I wish everybody could be a therapist because I learn more in my therapy sessions than I think my patients do. So that's my experience of kind of what got me to be that Amazon expert and gain all this insight and strategy. It was just working with hundreds and hundreds of brands, making mistakes, learning as we went, and then just really learning from the best minds in the business.
That's really cool. It's funny to think about that, but you're right. Across every field, I bet people look at things and pick up patterns. Talk a little bit about some of the patterns you've seen around launching an innovative product. Like, what are the things that you're seeing out there on Amazon that are working? What are the things you're seeing right now that are not working and that people are still doing, even though they're not successful?
The biggest challenge of launching an innovative product is the idea of creating demand first. Most people, if they launch a restaurant, they open up the doors, they hire a wait staff, they hire a chef, they print menus, and they maybe put up a website or put themselves in Yelp or the Yellow Pages or Google. I don't think Yellow Pages exist anymore. And they wait for people to come in. And you contrast that with a restaurant owner who understands this concept and they are doing pre-marketing ahead of time, getting people excited to the point where they open the restaurant, they're fully booked out for the first week. And it's because you create the demand before you go there and put the product out there. And so the best thing that I can say for innovative brands, for, brands that have an innovative product, or in some cases a service as well, it's to leverage Shopify, like an e-commerce website, and social media to begin to get the product out there and create demand and awareness and let people come to you and get that product feedback, iterate the product fast, and also begin to fine tune the messaging around the product and the customer experience. Because it's very possible to have a great product that works the way you intended it to, but you realize there's a disconnect and customers don't understand it intuitively, use it incorrectly, have a negative customer experience, and that results in negative product reviews. You don't want to launch that on Amazon and have those kind of reviews live and die with the brand. So you want to actually start sort of in a smaller ecosystem before that. Like I said, reach the audience, create demand, build awareness, fine tune the messaging, find out who your audience is. Sometimes brands don't even know who their customers are. And it use, influencers and everything else. But there's this aspect of create demand first and then focus on creating supply. A lot of people create the supply and say, I've got 200,000 of these in the warehouse. I got to sell them. Let's put together a marketing plan. Flip that. You got it backwards. You got to put it in reverse.
That's so good. I even think about when I launched my book, I did it through Shopify, like you talked about.
Yeah.
And I did get so much feedback on who my customer was, demographics, information. And so that is priceless. And as you know, Amazon's pretty much a black box in the sense that you're not going to know who's viewing, who's looking, who's liking, unless they leave a review and give, some personal information. So I love the idea of, I almost think about it in the product development world as incubate, right? Incubate it small,
Absolutely.
learn, and then launch it on the bigger platform. So I love that you've brought those principles forward because I think that just makes sense across the board, no matter whether you're going to plan to go on to Amazon or not. You have to learn who your customer is and what they want.
Yeah, I've talked to so many innovators, and the ones who do this, I talked to one who developed a Golf Pro product, and he just spent almost 2 years iterating it over and over and over again. They found a way to make it better, faster. They realized there were some things that they thought they needed in the product. People said, we actually don't want that. There were some of the things that they wanted that they didn't have included. They found a way to manufacture it better. And they've just spent the time, they've invested the time, money, and energy to get that piece right. And now they're coming to us talking about, okay, we're now ready to launch on Amazon. We've got the feedback, we've iterated, we know who our target customers are, and people are excited. They're already building demand growth in that category.
You talked a little bit earlier about how fast Amazon changes. And I would agree with you, which is probably why it's hard to keep up with a course that you launched all that time ago, because
Yeah.
it's like, man, it's changing so rapidly. So you're probably at this point like, no, just come work with our company and we'll help you because everything just changes, right? But talk a little bit about that from the seller standpoint. How can they stay on top of the trends and the things that are changing with Amazon? And also, you and I have talked about this before, and I found it very fascinating. But one of the things that, you've talked about is the fact that, kind of rip off competitors, right, will pop up overnight as you're trying to get your product, your message out there. And so, how do you kind of navigate some of those waters?
So for the first part, Amazon changes daily. And, we've got an entire team of, 75 plus subject matter experts across all verticals of Amazon. And there's about a dozen or so. It's possible to subscribe to some newsletters and get those high level updates of what Amazon's doing. But the nuance of best practices and everything from fulfillment and inventory and catalog and advertise and detail page optimization, it is endless. And it's why Jason, our founder, he was a top 200 Amazon seller for about 17 years prior to starting. It's why he created the business, because we can basically act as a fully outsourced Amazon department. Instead of you having to go hire 10 to 15 people to do what one company can do as sort of an extension of your internal team. And so it's really at a place where it's not just about the knowledge. I like to say there's 3 levels of expertise. There's knowing what to do, knowing how to do it, and being good at doing it.
Mm.
Even if you learn what you need to do, you still don't know how to do it. Even if you take the extra term to learn how to do it, you're not going to be great at it unless you invest all of your time. Well, you need to go build your brand.
Yeah.
And so there's certain things where, yes, you can start out doing things yourself. Launching on Amazon is usually not one of them. 10 years ago, yes. 7 years ago, yes. I launched my product on Amazon 14 years ago. And, I've sold tens of thousands of, of units over that time. I've only got a couple products, and it's really just sort of a side project for me. But to do it today, you can make so many mistakes that can literally forever impact your account and your listing, everything else. Wait until you're ready. Wait until you've got the funding, the financing, the demand to launch, and then hire a managed service provider. Amazon has a list of service provider, sort of a service provider network that you can go through on their website. And it's just one of those things, you just want to outsource it. And if you're doing personal taxes, that's great. If you're doing corporate taxes, it's probably something you want to outsource. The margin for error and mistakes is a little high. So that's kind of on the keeping up to date with Amazon part. It's important to understand the trends, but the nuances is infinite. The second part of the question is about the Me Too's and the copycats. And there is a trend that we have seen over the last several years where any product that sells successfully on Amazon at any level, you will get overseas factory direct who can replicate that product faster and sell it cheaper. And it's no longer a matter of, okay, you've got a year or two. We're talking about months to weeks. We have seen a product launch on Amazon, and within a matter of weeks, there are Me Too's, copycats, and sort of knockoff products on Amazon.
Wow.
And so the first to market isn't the goal. You have to have a moat. You have to build a defensible product. And really, Natalie, you have to build a defensible brand. It's not enough to have a product anymore. People go, I've got a product. Okay, where's your next product in the pipeline? A single invention is not going to cut it anymore. If you're what I call a visionary engineer and you just want to
Mhm.
invent products, go license them, go
Yeah.
sell them to a bigger company. Don't try to do it yourself, because it's not enough to sustain on a single product anymore. And so in terms of defensibility, there's a handful of ways you can do that. Obviously, cost of manufacturing. If it's prohibitive cost of manufacturing, we have a client that says, look, our molds are $50,000. That's going to keep the competition off to a good extent. You also have patents. You have utility patents. You have design patents. You have ways that you can protect your product. People will find a way around it, guaranteed. They'll make enough changes,
Mhm.
just enough to sneak around it. And so out of all the things you can do, including regulatory compliance, if you have a product that's maybe a medical device, for example, the best thing you can do is build brand equity and awareness. People have to love, know, and trust your brand. So even when they see that other brand or other seller that they've never heard of and can't pronounce, and they see that popping up next to your listing at
Mhm.
25% off, they have to have a reason to pick your brand and product. And the reason is I've got an emotional connection to your brand, to your product. I trust you. I know that I'm going to get a good quality product. I know that if I have an issue, I'm going to get good quality service. I like what you've built, why you've built it, and I want to take my money and support you because I know that you're the innovator that created this.
That's so good. It reminds me, I had a friend who created a really phenomenal phrase, and overnight, someone famous wore his shirt, and I had been kind of like pushing him, hey, you need to trademark this, you need to trademark this. He never trademarked it. And overnight, factories in China popped up and they were pushing the shirt untrademarked by him.
Yeah.
And so even this, the simplest things, right, that we can do to protect ourselves. I hope that people are listening and thinking through what do they need to do as they're launching that. And I love what you said around branding because you're spot on. I mean, being able to anchor back to a brand that has a brand promise that you trust, even if you're going to save a few dollars. For example, as a consultant, I should have bought some stock in, Post-it and 3M because I love Post-it specifically. And I always get so annoyed when I accidentally buy the wrong brand because as I'm using it, it's peeling off the walls. I can always tell. I'm like, oh, those aren't Post-its. Those aren't real Post-its because they're peeling off the walls as you're trying to use them. And so there is, once you get anchored to a brand that delivers on its brand promise and is reliable and has quality, I mean, you want to keep going and back and buying from that brand over and over and over again. So I think what you said is so sound around this specific space.
Yeah, there was a question that you had talked about a little bit before we hopped on, and that's this idea of market research. And Post-it notes is a great example. I don't know if you know the story of this. Do you know the
I'd love to hear
history
it.
of Post-it notes? It's one of my favorites. It's called the Boise Blitz. There's actually a name for it. And the innovation of Post-it notes was they actually created an adhesive that didn't work because it didn't actually adhere. It came off. And they're like, well, that's not good. But 3M is such an innovative company and they've got a great culture of innovation. They understand that sometimes that you find the solution before you discover the problem. And so they had the solution sitting around, and he was at choir practice one day and his bookmark kept falling off the pages. And he said, how can I get this thing to stick? And he remembered this adhesive. And one of the key indicators or key aspects of the adhesive was that it peeled off of paper without tearing, without leaving a mark. I thought, oh, I wonder if we could use that. Well, they had some old sort of unused copy paper that happened to be canary yellow that they weren't using in sort of the office. And so they just cut them up into these little squares and they applied this adhesive and everybody loved it. They started handing them out to people in the office and people in the office are using them. And then they're taking them home and they're taking them to their wives and their husbands. And people are like, these are amazing. And then they sent them, so smart, they sent them to the executive assistants of all of the Fortune 100 companies, all the Fortune 100 CEOs. And they loved them and they kept asking for more. These are phenomenal. Where can we get more? And then they did the market research. And it was crickets. Nobody wanted them. And I said, we can't understand this. We can't figure out why this is. So they went to the city, they flew to the city where they were doing the market research. And they said, what's going on? And they found out that people were handing out flyers that described Post-it notes. They weren't actually giving out samples.
Wow.
And the problem with market research is it only works for products that already exist. Iteration, not innovation. When it comes to innovation, market research doesn't work because it's based on a product that people have to imagine exists.
Yeah.
And we can't put that burden of imagination and transcendent creativity and vision on our customers. That's our responsibility. And so they realize, well, we know when we give it to people, they love it. How can we test this? We need a place where people have the ability to reorder and repurchase if they have, been exposed to it or if they've gotten a sample. But we can't have it be in this really, an area that's too tiny. And we can't just do it in a massive city because the population is too big. But Boise, Idaho was the perfect size of a city to do a test. And it was remote enough that they could actually get a good data sample. People weren't going off to other cities, for example, and they could actually test it. So they went to Boise, Idaho, and what they called the Boise Blitz, and they handed out thousands of free Post-it notes. And then they put them at all of the, the general supply stores and grocery stores around town. And they found that 98% of people who had gotten a free sample went to the store and
Jeez,
bought another one.
that's
And they
great.
go, okay, we've got a winner. Let's go. And so there's just this aspect where market research for innovation really doesn't work. Everybody wants the market research because it gives you data. And it works for other products or brands or categories where you're doing iterative changes. For innovation, you got to throw it out. You've got to start using the product. It has to be a product that you want to use yourself. It has to be a product that you observe your customers using an inferior product, or they don't have a solution, and you go, oh, I can solve that. And not only do you make them a handful, but they start giving it to all their friends and telling everybody they know, and sort of build that demand. I mean, you think about Sarah Blakely, creating Spanx,
Yep.
right? She cut the feet off her pantyhose and created a billion-dollar brand, right? There was no market demand for this at the
That's
time,
right.
but she knew that she needed it. And when she talked to just a handful of her friends, just a couple people, one of her earliest investors basically said, look, I don't think the business idea is good, but my daughters do. And based on that, I'm going to go with it.
Wow.
And it was a gut instinct. And so you have to be careful of doing market research because there's so many false indicators that it's not reliable data. And it's
Well,
not going to tell you whether you should pursue a product that's good or dump a product that's bad. You got to get it out there.
Well, and I even think about her newest invention, which is the high heel sneaker. I don't know if you've seen this or not, Shannon.
I have not yet.
Okay,
I don't
so-
follow shoe fashion trend in any genre.
Right. Well, so, I think her frustration was, hey, why can't we have a sneaker that also serves as something a little more professional, but actually doesn't feel like your foot's in a vice all day? So now she's come out with the sneaker. And so how has she done that? The high heel sneaker, I don't know what she's going to call it, but again, she's built a brand. But part of the challenge was there was no factories that could build this prototype for her. So it's taken her years to actually be able to build a prototype combining a sneaker technology and the kind of the pump technology together into, I don't know what she's calling it, sneaker pump.
Yeah.
But you're right. If you were to go out and do market research on that, I think people would roll their eyes. But now that she's built the prototype and she's walking around wearing it, I imagine, especially with her name and brand, it's going to do probably quite well.
And
so,
everybody
yeah.
knows it's been a problem for years.
For
I mean,
years.
anybody has ever been in an office complex has heard women complain about the high heel shoes. And you just think that's got to be $1 billion idea somewhere. The question is, do you have the creativity and the innovation and the grit to be able to go out and build it?
Yeah. And in her case, the money, because again, this technology to actually build the prototype did not exist in the method that she needed. So I would imagine she spent a lot of money to get it to this point. And so this is a really cool conversation around innovation. Talk a little bit about just some different tips when we think about successful product launches. We've kind of done that. I think we've talked about it a little bit, but let's drive this home because I think that there's so much gold in what you just talked about around product launches and innovation and thinking about what's an iteration versus what's something that's so net new. You can't ask your customers to dream about it. You have to create it and put it in their hands so that they can actually understand what you're even trying to create in the first place.
Yeah. So the last tip that I'll leave with audience around launching an innovative product is a combination. And it's the use of video and influencers. We all know, we've seen the trends of videos continuing to grow in popularity on social media. Okay, by the year 2027, Facebook will be 98% video and 2% text posts or image posts, for example. Funny cat memes. But we also have seen this trend of using influencers over traditional marketing. But the reason it's so important with innovation is because SEO keyword research also doesn't work. You can't find out what the search volume is for a product or product category that doesn't exist, that nobody's searching for. You've got to find the audience. Well, how do you find the audience? You can't do it one at a time because that's going to take a very long time and be very expensive. How do you find a group of people? And the best entrepreneurs have an uncanny sense and ability to detect who their customers are, where they can find them, and how much they're going to be willing to pay for the product.
Yeah.
I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm a visionary and an engineer, but I'm not an entrepreneur. And if you see true entrepreneurs, they can spot business opportunities anywhere. And so the reason this is so important is you don't have to go find all these audiences. The influencers already have them. All you have to do is find the influencers who have the audience. And so I'll give you an example. We've worked with several clients who have baby products, innovative baby products. You don't want to just go advertise on products for your baby or on generic keywords like diapers and just hope that they come across your product and decide to buy it instead. Again, it's very, very expensive and time consuming. Plus, you lack the social proof, especially as a new product, a new brand. Nobody knows you. Nobody trusts you. You leverage the influencer to get in front of the audience. And the idea of using video is the same thing that we talked about with Post-it notes. People have to see it to believe it.
Mhm.
And I have seen products that have sat on the shelf and not sold any with static images. And the second you put up a video, people go, oh my gosh, I get it.
Yep.
I worked with a company called Wisp, and we had static images selling the product, trying to push the product on Amazon, trying to push it on the website. It wasn't moving. We created a 6-minute video, launched it on Kickstarter, and an influencer actually came and found the video, edited it together in a 30-second spot, added music and titles. And the video went viral and got 100 million views, and we sold out in a week.
Oh my gosh.
The increase in sales was 300,000% from the week prior to the week after. That's the power of video and influencers. And one influencer found it. They go, oh my gosh, this is a great video. They created their own version of the video, and then they would launch it because they all want affiliate revenue, right? Influencers operate off of an affiliate revenue model. As an aside, I recommend going after affiliate revenue as opposed to paying an influencer $100,000.
Right.
Typically not going to see an ROI on that. Find small, passionate micro influencers who have a great following and say, look, I'll pay you 10%, 15, 20% commission after the sale. No money up front. Give them the products, have them show it, demonstrate it, talk through the feedback that you've already gotten from your website customers that, people sometimes think I should use it this way. You don't want to do it that way. You want to make sure that you do this and then you put it together this way. And it solves that customer experience problem. And so the use of video and influencers to launch an innovative product, absolutely essential. Again, you can use advertising to do retargeting on Amazon. Once you get to a certain threshold, we can use Amazon DSP, which is basically it's audience-based targeting. So we can fine-tune metrics and demographics and income. And it's unbelievable what we can do, but you can't start there. That's where you take, you end there, you take it to the next level. So I would say the use of video with social influencers is an absolute goldmine. And if you're not an entrepreneur, if that's not your skill set, license it, sell it, or partner. Because I think the most frustrated individuals I've seen created a great product, had a great idea, and spend a good percentage of their life and money trying to sell a product when somebody with that entrepreneurial type mindset would be able to kick it off in a month. And so those are kind of my parting nuggets of wisdom, if you will.
So good. Oh, you got to come back. So I feel like we probably didn't even scratch the surface of what we could have talked about. So you have to come back and join us again. Where can people find and follow you?
So I'm on LinkedIn, Shannon Roddy, and at Avenue 7 Media. It's avenue7media.com. And of course, if you've got a brand or an innovative product, we love to talk to brands. We love talking about the strategy. How do we position you for a great product launch and how we can act as a fully outsourced Amazon service provider?
Love it. Well, thanks for your time today. And thanks for joining me.
Thanks again for having me, Natalie. Appreciate it.
Well, to our listeners, thank you for joining the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. And remember, don't just get out of the box, break the box and set it on fire. Let's go transform something.
Thank you for joining us for the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. Be sure to subscribe to our show on iTunes. Follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Innovation Meets Leadership, and visit our site at innovationmeetsleadership.com for more innovation resources.
Hey, my new book is out, Set It on Fire, The Art of Innovation. Click on the link to learn more. And don't just get out of the box, break the box and set it on fire. Let's go transform something.